welcome to the YYC Soccer Podcast. My name is Jason Kmet, and my co-host is Scott Strasser. Hey, Scott.
Hey, Jason. Long time no see.
Yeah, it's been almost 2 weeks since we recorded last. Breaking one of the rules of podcasting, as far as I'm concerned, it's like be consistent. We haven't been on top of that this past week or so, but that's my fault. I was kind of thinking that we wanted to wait a little longer before we did an episode.
Yeah, and just to explain why we didn't release an episode last week, we had an inkling that there were going to be some roster-related announcements, specifically for Cavalry FC in early December. That's typically when they announce player departures, player re-signings, and that kind of thing. So we held out, and I guess it's good that we did, because some big Cavalry-related news dropped this week that we're definitely going to talk a lot about. But there's also lots of other stuff in the Calgary soccer world going on with the Calgary Wild. They've announced some player departures since our last episode. We also didn't really get to go into Cavalry's draft picks. So yeah, lots of fodder for this week's episode.
Definitely. And let's open with Cavalry FC.
This is Marco Carducci, and you're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
All right, so big announcement out of Spruce Meadows yesterday, Jason. Marco Carducci, captain, one of the last remaining players from the inaugural 2019 season, hometown hero. He is, after 7 years and 193 appearances, departing the club. He announced this in a series of videos and a club announcement yesterday. Big departure. What did you make of this announcement? I don't think you and I were as surprised as maybe some people.
Yeah, like we've chatted about this topic offline before, and I didn't have any specific inside knowledge, but I kind of just had a hunch, a feeling that this was a possibility. And we knew that the contract that he signed was expiring, and yeah, I guess basically expiring contract, new opportunities.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're Marco Carducci, you're 29 years old. You've been with this particular club, your hometown club, for 7 seasons, and you've achieved everything that there is to achieve at this level, right? You've lifted 2 trophies. You've played against MLS opposition, Liga MX opposition. So I guess, from Marco's perspective, it probably is time for a new challenge. And that's what he said in his announcement, that he is ready for a new chapter and a new challenge. So, I'm excited for him wherever he ends up. I think he has definitely earned an opportunity to show his quality at a higher level. I think after the inaugural season, Jason, in 2019, when Marco was called up to the national team, the first CPL player to be called up, I fully expected him to kind of use the CPL as a launch pad. And I guess he's stayed in the league a bit longer than I expected, but he has been one of the success stories of the league. And I'm fully expecting that we're going to see some big things from him in the future.
Obviously, he could have probably stayed here forever and finished his career here. And this just goes into the whole concept of, athletes are very competitive and there's probably some internal drive to challenge yourself and try something new, try something different. So at 29 years of age, if he was to sign another contract with Cavalry, that may not be his last contract ever, but it probably would really be his last contract if he really wanted to make a move to try to do something different. So it kind of tracks that way. And he's been nothing but great from our perspective. It's always been the guy that they pull out and at a post-match press conference when there's been a tough loss and it's not the easiest press conference to do. And he's been a great spokesman for the club and everything like that. So obviously I think we wish him all the best, but I guess now's the time where we become pundits and speculate, A, where could he possibly end up, and B, who's going to replace him?
Yeah, because they are big shoes to fill, right? I think Marco has played almost every game since he's come back from his testicular cancer surgery in 2022, right? I mean, he played every game in 2024, did he not? Maybe one game he didn't in 2025, or
if I'm not mistaken, he played every match this year. And then last year, he only missed the one match when, remember, they had that guy, I can't remember what his name is, but he was an English keeper who was on loan to Cavalry. And he was the backup keeper for the first, I don't know, like couple months of the season. They did have him play one match in 2024. So, but just to give you perspective, like Joe Holiday has been with the club now for 3 years, I think.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
he has not played any CPL minutes since he joined the team. He played in that match against Scottish, I believe, in the Canadian Championship, but he hasn't logged 1 minute of CPL time since he's been here, which is pretty crazy when you think about it for the length of time he's been here and that he hasn't got into a game.
Yeah. Marco has just been the ever present between the sticks, right? He's someone who Cavalry is heavily leaned on, been heavily reliant on in terms of their goalkeeping over throughout their entire history. I don't think you have to go back to probably Nico Giantsopoulos, right, in 2019 to find someone who played a decent number of minutes as a backup. Like, that's just how prevalent Marco has been. And yeah, I think it'll be tough to replace him. He's obviously one of the top goalkeepers in the CPL. We're going to talk about that as well, Jason, but we also wanted to kind of speculate where we think he'll go, because you and I have had a pretty extensive text message conversation about this in the past day or so.
I just think we should probably just frame this as, what would be inside Marco Carducci's brain if he was thinking about making a move? Like, what factors would he be looking for in order to, make this kind of move? So, and what would be realistically available for him? So some players are ambitious. They want to move up to a higher level. They want to try something different. They want to have the potential to make more money. We probably would start with, what do we think is the motivating factor for Marco leaving the club and going somewhere else? What do you think, Scott?
I'm of the same opinion that you are, that he wants a new challenge in a new environment. I don't see him making a lateral move to another CPL club. The only ones that I think wouldn't be a step down would be Forge and arguably Ottawa, right? And I don't think you go from being the captain of Cavalry FC to transfer to Forge. It's just not a pipeline we've seen. And Ottawa doesn't really make sense to me. So I do think it's to another league and in another country. It's just a matter of, does that mean the US? We've seen Marco before he came back to Calgary, and after his stint with Vancouver Whitecaps, he did go to the USL to join Rio Grande Valley Toros in Texas, I believe, and I don't think played very much, but was still very young at the time. So USL Championship, so the top division of the USL pyramid. That seems like a likely landing point for him, Jason, but I do think that I think he has the Italian passport that could get him a work permit quite easily in Europe. So maybe Italy is on his radar. I'm not too sure.
Well, if you believe Transfermarkt, he does show as having an Italian flag by his name under nationality. So that would lead me to think he does have a Italian passport, which is an EU passport, which doesn't just give you access to Italy, but the other EU countries as far as like work permits and that sort of thing that you don't need. But so I think, that could be a possibility. I kind of have the opinion it seems more likely it is like USL as an option. I don't think it's going to be CPL for the same reasons you said, and also for another reason. I think that if he was leaving for a CPL club, there wouldn't have been the same level of celebration by the Cavalry front office, right? Like when you think about when Dominic Zator left Cavalry, and he didn't have as long a career as Marco did, but he was kind of an icon at that point that would have been at the similar level. And when he made the lateral move to York, like it was just included in the end of the year announcements. So we'd like to thank the following players for playing and they will not be returning. And it was someone, Dominic Zator and someone. They never made anything about that at all. But here they've really, now I realize he's probably the single most influential player in club history, but I just think that if he was going to a rival club, they may not have made it into such a big thing.
Yeah, you know what this announcement reminded me of? The closest comparison thus far has been Jose Escalante when he left in I believe it was 2023.
Man, I hope it ends up better than that.
Yeah, I think it will. I think, it was it seemed like a very amicable departure, right? Like they talk about how he's always going to be a Cav. He's always welcome back. I don't think he's going to another CPL club at all. And I don't watch enough MLS to know if there's any team in MLS that's looking at that needs a goalkeeper right now. I don't think Marco would want to be a backup anywhere. And when you consider the Canadian nationality issue with MLS, I mean, I don't think he's making that move. But yeah, as we've said, I think USL Championship is a pretty good guess, and I think we've seen top CPL players make that move before.
I'm just going to throw out my theory about what about other leagues like Europe and MLS. As much as, we're fond of Marco, he's a 29-year-old player who's never set foot in Europe to play. So I think that even if he has an EU passport with that lack of track record, could he get an offer? Could he get something? He probably could, but I would think that it would not be a guaranteed number one spot. And I don't think it would be like for big bucks. And then MLS, kind of the same thing, right? Like, could he get a shot at an MLS club? Oh, I'm sure. There's probably 5-6 teams that would bring him to camp, but probably like not promise him a lot in regards to playing time. And also, even from a salary perspective, probably not that big an increase. But when you think about USL, the one team that I really have set on is Brooklyn. It's a new expansion team. Just think about it. If somebody for that Brooklyn organization called you up and said, "Hey, we're in New York. We have a clean slate. We want you to be our foundational player, our starting keeper. The job is yours to lose. And by the way, we're going to pay you a fair bit more than you were getting paid in the CPL." That might be enough. That might be what it is.
Okay, yeah. I know you like the Brooklyn idea. I'm going to go in a different direction, Jason. I can really see Marco going to Phoenix Rising. I have no inside or background knowledge of this. It's just a move that I think makes a lot of sense, and I'm going to say why. Phoenix Rising's head coach is Pa Moduka, who used to coach Pacific FC when they won the CPL title in 2021. So Pa Moduka would be very familiar with Marco. Secondly, Pa Moduka's assistant is Vikram Virk, a former teammate of mine. We've had him on the podcast. He used to be assistant coach with Cavalry, right? And was the U21 team coach. So he would probably vouch for Marco. And then if you think about it, that's where Tristan Henry went. Tristan Henry, former goalkeeper for Forge FC. I've always rated Marco as being a better goalkeeper than Tristan Henry. He was backup this year. He only played 4 games according to his Wikipedia page, but their first choice goalkeeper is 32 or 33, I believe. So not sure if they're in the market for a goalkeeper or not, but for those reasons, as well as the fact that, as I've mentioned, Marco does have experience with USL Championship with Rio Grande Valley, I just see Phoenix as being a logical move.
All right. Well, we've locked in our predictions, and I guess we'll see what happens. I think that something has pretty much been determined, though. I know there was a comment in, I think it was somewhere I saw where they said that nothing's been decided. I doubt that. I think it's already been decided. It's just a matter of it being announced. So we'll watch with interest. Let's get back to Cavalry. So big shoes to fill. And this seems like a huge hole, but as weird as it sounds, there's actually a ready-made replacement that is available and ready to go and is rumored to have already been talking to the Cavs.
Yeah, I agree 100% on this. Nathan Ingham, goalkeeper for Atletico Ottawa, just coming off of their championship win over Cavalry. Jason, I'm a big fan of Nate Ingham, have been ever since the start of the CPL when he was still playing for York. I think he's a great goalkeeper. And obviously he has history in Calgary with Tommy Wheeldon Jr., right? Like he was on the Foothills team in 2018 that won the PDL championship. And as far as I know, he's never really had anything bad to say about Cavalry. He's always been very gracious and talks about the fan base with a lot of admiration. So considering that, as well as the fact that There was an article about him exploring his options. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Josh Healy from Halifax Football Post reported that he had been talking to Cavalry, and at the time, Marco's departure wasn't known. So it was a little bit of at the time, I think it was a little bit of a head scratcher. Why would Ingham be talking to Cavalry? But to me, that's all the more reason to think it's happening. So is it a done deal? Well, not that we know of, but it would make a lot of sense. In a lot of ways, he's a reliable starting keeper. He's a leader. He's a couple years older than Marco, I think, but otherwise they're similar in a lot of ways. So that could definitely be a way they could go, I think.
I agree completely. I think Cavalry has to be looking outside of their current goalkeeping core, simply because of, as we've mentioned, nobody else has really had, the playing time in the last several years. It's been Marco in between the sticks every game, and you can't replace that with someone who's just, has one or two professional games under their belt. So I could fully see Nathan Ingham coming to Spruce Meadows next season.
Yeah, and right now, Cavalry has no goalkeepers under contract. They're at the end of the year, they only had two keepers, and it was Carducci and Joe Holiday. And Joe Holiday's contract has expired or is expiring, so he would need to be re-signed. And with respect, I think Cavalry obviously has rated him very highly, but at the end of the day, I don't think you're going to plan to go into the season anointing your starting keeper with someone that has as little experience as he does if you really want to make a serious title run, which Cavalry does every year. So they may bring back Holiday, but I think as someone else will have the number one role.
So, Jason, speaking of Joseph Holiday, there are other players who are going to be out of contract in the coming weeks. We should mention them. The club has said that they remain in discussion with these players. So I don't know if we'll see all of them back, but hopefully we'll see most of them, because this list includes, as we've talked about in past episodes, players like Fraser Aird, Shamit Shom, Ali Musi, and then we also know that Nicholas Vailing's contract is coming up, and Mikhail Gerasimenkov, his loan from Vancouver Whitecaps, has ended.
I don't know, Scott. I look at that list of players, and there's three other regular starters in Aird, Shom, and Musi, and I just have a hard time imagining that all three of them will be back. But it just seems to me like that could be tough to get them all under contract.
Yeah, I agree. I think two of them will probably be back, but it'd be a surprise to see all three.
Yeah, and of the three, I think Ali Musi probably will attract the most interest. Like he would be the one probably that will get multiple offers, and not to say that the other players wouldn't get offers, but I think that Musi will be a very hot commodity and probably would be more likely on that basis of increased demand. You would think he would be maybe a bit more likely to move. And then there's a bunch of players that are under option that could have their options triggered, and that's Tom Field, Michael Harms, Eric Kobza, Michael Baldissimo, Diego Gutierrez, Nico Myroniak, and Ayman Salouf. Are there any players in there, Scott, that you specifically do want to see come back? And is there any that you're like, whatever?
Well, that's actually a hard question for me to answer, because I think every one of those players has had some really good games for Cavalry, and then some iffy games, and then just spells where they were out injured or maybe not featuring as much. So it's funny because Diego Gutierrez, I thought he was one of the best players in the CPL in his last season for Valor. And then he came to Cavalry and kind of had a different role, much more defensive, a lot less attack focused. But I thought he did really well in the championship season in 2024. Formed a really good partnership with Shamit Shom in the anchor midfield positions. But he didn't really have as strong a season this year. I know he battled injury. He battled to come back from an injury, and it just seemed like he was struggling a lot more, probably due to that. Like, he's one who, if he could refine his form from 2024, I would absolutely like to see him back.
I look at this list and I think most of these guys are going to come back. I think Kobza coming back is pretty much a slam dunk. I think Field is pretty likely. I know they rate Michael Harms, and I think that they would like to have him back. And if Fraser Aird is one of the players to move on, like, there will be a real priority to bring Harms back because he plays the same position. Nico Myroniak, again, I think they rate him pretty highly. And Eamon Salouf is interesting because I think he did not really impress that much this year. But I don't know, like, what do you think? Like, if they re-sign Musi, I could easily see them letting his option go. But if Musi is leaving, maybe you want to bring him back?
I guess so, but again, like he really didn't have his best season in the CPL for Cavalry, right? Like he was a much better player for Pacific, to be honest. So depends. Like we definitely didn't see the best of Salouf, and maybe the club, if he sticks around, he could have a better season. But yeah, he's one who, when I saw that list, I thought, I don't think Cavalry fans would miss him too much, but they really didn't get to see the Eamon Salouf that Pacific fans got a few years ago. So why don't we rattle off who we know will be on the Cavalry FC roster next season, at least as of today. So it's not that long of a list, but there are players on here who I think fans will be breathing a sigh of relief to know they're back.
All right, let's start at defender. We have Bradley Camden Fawo, Dan Comp, Levi Lang, and Callum Montgomery.
And then in midfield, we have the last holdout from 2019, Jason. Sergio Camargo will be back. Interesting to see that he achieved some, I guess, performance-based targets to trigger a return. Did you see that line in the news release?
I did see that line.
And then Mael Henry and James McGlinchey.
And at forward, Kaniji Elva, Jay Herdman, Goten Natigny, and Tobias Warshevsky.
Yeah, so it's not a long list, but seeing Warshevsky, Klomp, Goten Natigny back, those, Cavalry fans will be really relieved to see a lot of these guys returning in coming months. And Camargo, too, after the year he had.
I am Christian Greco-Taylor, and this is the YYC Soccer Podcast.
Okay, Scott, let's talk about the CPL draft because we haven't talked about it yet. And you know how much I love this stuff. I love, anything involving, bringing in players and drafts and recruiting and stuff. So I've been chomping at the bit to talk about this. So let's get into it. Cavalry had 2 picks in the draft, and one local name and one name from someone we've never heard of.
And that's what we were expecting in our preview episode before the draft. We made our predictions, and we predicted that there'd be one local and one non-local, and that's about as close as we got to predicting these draft picks, because we were far off, weren't we?
Yeah. Chinan Chanda, top pick. He never got drafted at all, which just boggles my mind. I don't know how that would happen, but.
And Cavalry also didn't go with our pick for the local was Sharky Strauss, the Mount Royal University goalkeeper. So we were pretty far off with our predictions, but we may as well say who they were now. Emmanuel Dan-Adokene from Trinity Western University. He is a Calgary product. And the second pick in the draft was defender Luke Ihama from Toronto Metropolitan University.
Yeah, so for Dan-Adokene, he's a guy who's been playing for Foothills in League One Alberta and is a guy who definitely has some offensive capability. He's, I think, a bigger guy, a bit of a physical presence. And we talked about it not being as likely to be a forward that they were going to pick. But, I guess he's a guy that is a local player that they were intrigued and wanted to bring him in. So I guess from that perspective, what are your thoughts on him before we move on to the next guy?
I have to confess, I would have seen him play at least one game for Foothills last year, but I don't remember him. But he fits the bill as someone with the caliber to hear their name called in the draft, right? 21 years old, 8 goals and 15 appearances for Trinity Western in 2025, and he was on the Canada West All-Rookie team in 2024. So yeah, he's definitely had success in youth sports, and excited to see how he does with Cavalry this year, if he'll get a few games or not.
Mm-hmm. And the other draft pick, Luke Ihama from Barrie, Ontario, and playing at Toronto Metropolitan University, and he's a defender. And I looked up just to see like what kind of defender is he? Is he a center back or whatever? And he plays fullback. So another fullback prospect, kind of like last year, Harvey Hughes was a fullback. They brought him in as a draft pick. So yeah, and he seems to have a pretty good pedigree. Played at the college level and then has moved on up to the U Sports level.
Yeah, and he's also played for Simcoe County Rovers in League One Ontario and actually won a league title with them in 2023. So I don't know if he would have been involved in the following year's Canadian Championship or not, but he's done well. And yeah, I mean, can't say that I've seen him play, but it does seem to be a decent overall draft for Cavalry this year.
And one other Calgary connection was involved in the draft. There was a Mount Royal player picked, but as we said, not Shanann Chanda. It was Joseph Green, who was drafted third overall by Vancouver.
Yeah, and he's actually he's trained with a CPL club before, with Valor previously, and his name was called early, Jason, number 3, which considering we figured that the Supra would be drafting from Quebec. Basically, he was the top non-Quebec draft pick this year.
Clearly, they rate him. So, yeah, congrats to him. There are a couple other players from Calgary that are on CPL rosters, and there was news about them this past week as well. Pacific fullback Christian Greco-Taylor was retained by the club. I believe his option was activated. And Elijah Adokene, after a few years with York United, he's not going to be joining Inter Toronto FC.
Yeah, which was a little bit of a surprise to me. I thought he'd stay for at least the first year as Inter Toronto. But Christian Greco-Taylor, that makes total sense. I think he really hammered down a key role for Pacific this year. Obviously, the club itself struggled, but he seemed to do pretty well out there on the wing or at fullback. Elijah Adokene, I mean, I'm a big fan of his. I thought it was a big loss for Cavalry when he went to York, but I guess he's been there for 3 years now, and maybe he, like Marco Carducci, is ready for a new challenge.
Yeah, I'm going to say he's off to Vancouver FC.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think that it seems like Martin Nash is likely to stay there, so he would know Elijah from his time with Cavalry and his time with York. And let's face it, that Vancouver FC team, that roster needs some shoring up. And there's also the carrot of playing in CONCACAF there too. So I think that's where I kind of expect to see him. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. But I'll make that prediction right now.
And that would put both Adokene brothers in Vancouver again.
Yeah.
Hi, it's Janaea Robertson, and you're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
All right, Jason, since our last episode, we've also heard several players from the inaugural Calgary Wild roster won't be back for year 2. Some of these names, I think you and I were not surprised by at all. However, I'd say 1 or 2 of them we were surprised by.
Yeah, let's run through the list. 6 players, as you mentioned: Christy Gray, Danielle Steer, Madison Wilson, Ali Green, Mike Rolfsma, and Stephanie Bukovec.
Yeah, and the one that surprised me the most was Stephanie Bukovec, right? The starting goalkeeper for the Calgary Wild. Played probably 90% of the games this year, and honestly kept Calgary in a lot of games. Had a really good season in terms of shot stopping. Did have a couple of really heavy defeats that the Calgary Wild suffered, but a lot of those goals that the team conceded weren't really, in my opinion, her fault. So yeah, I mean, not shattered to see her leave. I think they'll be able to find a decent replacement, but it makes sense. I think she has bounced from club to club kind of throughout her career. But everyone else on the list, I think, probably their departure is a result of underperforming, I would say.
I'm going to go a little counter to what you just said, Scott. I actually think that Bukovec actually kind of needed to go. As you mentioned, she bounces around from club to club, and I think the problem here is there are kind of her antics, her, things that she does. And, I noticed that halfway through the year, like, all the other clubs had her figured out. They had film on her and they knew what she would do, how she would get off her line and wander around, and you could chip it over her and that was successful, or she would always try and handle the ball, and if you pressured her, she might give it up. I think all the other teams had the book on her and knew exactly how to deal with her. And she's a veteran player. She's not going to change. Like, she is what she is. Like, you're not going to coach her out of doing those things. That's just what she does. And I think that you would be at a real disadvantage bringing her back, because every team in the league knows what she's going to do. And then how do you compensate for that?
Yeah, I hear you on that. But I do think though, like I think back to the last game of the season, and I think the reason the Calgary Wild won that game is because she made some key saves at the end of the match, and there were a lot of games where she made some really important saves in big moments. I thought the club liked her, so I was kind of surprised to see her included on this list. I thought, if they were going to keep 10 of the players from the inaugural season, I thought she would have been on that list of 10.
And I agree. She did do a good job of being a shot stopper, but I think that they probably did some analytics and whatever and decided that shot stopping wasn't enough. So just my theory, but I wasn't as surprised as maybe other people were. Any thoughts about the other players that we haven't talked about yet?
Apart from Ali Green, who I do think had some really good games for the Calgary Wild, yeah, most of those players just seem to really struggle at the NSL level, to be honest, right? I mean, Christy Gray, I think she went the whole season without a goal or an assist as an attack-minded player. Danielle Steer and Maddie Wilson, similarly, as we've kind of talked about a lot on this podcast, they just didn't produce to the extent that they did with their previous clubs. Everywhere else they played, they put the ball in the back of the net or got an assists, and with the Wild, they just couldn't make it happen. So for whatever reason, it just didn't seem like a good fit. Ali Green, I thought, at the start of the season, she was a real leader for the team, and it just seemed like in the games where the Wild were really down and out, she wasn't able to pick the team's performance up. I'm not too sure why she's not coming back, but overall, this list, apart from Bukovec, in my opinion, really does make a lot of sense.
I'm going to go back to something that I said at the when we did our mid-season report card. Import roster spots are precious. I think that the reason Ali Green's not coming back is because in the midseason, they signed Michelle Romero, and they play the same position. I think that they just decided that they can only keep one import spot for that position. I think they chose Romero instead of Ali Green. So I think that's the answer there. And then for Mike Rolfsma, I think it's kind of the same thing. It's like, if you're going to bring in a center back who is using one of those precious import spots, they have to be better than she was. You could probably make an argument that, she played okay, but for that import roster spot, I think you just need more.
Yeah, that's a good assessment. All right, Jason, before we move on to our final segment, we thought we'd mention that Calgarian Maya Jones has officially severed ties with San Diego in the NWSL. She was, of course, not playing for San Diego this year. She was on loan with AFC Toronto. However, was out injured the whole year and put out some Instagram posts kind of explaining where she was at with her injury recovery. Doesn't sound like she'll be playing anytime soon, unfortunately.
I'm pretty hopeful that she's going to get a chance to continue on in her pro career, but I think that based on what we've seen and what we've heard, based on recent surgery and the nature of her injury, it doesn't seem terribly likely that she'll be in a position to start training camp like in February with the club. So wish her all the best, but it's been a tough road for her. She's had a tough 2025, that's for sure.
Hello, this is Sydney Wathuda, and you're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
All right, let's just wrap up our episode with a couple of bits and pieces. Jason, we always call this our miscellaneous segment. Just kind of random Calgary soccer stories that are worth throwing out there. Former Cavalry and Foothills winger Willie Accio. We talked about how he was playing with the Marconi Stallions in Australia's new second division national league, and they had made it to the final. Unfortunately, they did lose that big championship game.
He was a starter, but they weren't able to grab the trophy. But I think a pretty successful season in Australia for him overall. And I think he's back in Calgary based on his Instagram and back in time for off-season's best, which he's involved in.
Yeah, that tournament, popular annual tournament post-Christmas, is coming back December 27th and 28th. We'll talk more about that in our next episode. Other than that, thought we'd mention that former podcast guest Sydney Wathuda has been retained by Colorado Rapids 2. He, of course, joined that team after being drafted by Colorado Rapids in the MLS Super Draft last year, which followed his NCAA championship season with University of Vermont Catamounts.
Kudos to Drew Fisher, a Calgary referee. He won MLS Referee of the Year, and he was the ref for the MLS final, the big match between Whitecaps and Miami.
Yeah, Jason, I watched this game last weekend. Pretty cool to see a Calgarian out there on the pitch refereeing a game that involved Lionel Messi and Thomas Mueller and others, Sergio Busquets, Jordi Alba playing, the very last game of their careers. Big occasion, lots of eyeballs on him. I thought he did a pretty good job reffing this game. No complaints from me. I was hoping that Vancouver would win. Unfortunately, Miami were just a little too strong on the day.
Over the last little while, there have been many, many, many announcements of Calgarians who are accepting university scholarships to play in 2026, and some players who are transferring. I'm not even going to attempt to try and go through all of them, but there were a few that I thought that kind of caught my attention. First one was Robert Woodruff Brown. He played for SAIT this year, and he scored a lot of goals in League One Alberta. He's moving to the U Sports level, and he's going to play for the University of Lethbridge Pronghorns.
Yeah, he had a really good 2025 in League One Alberta with Foothills, and then carried that forward to SAIT. And yeah, curious to see if he can keep it going at the University of Lethbridge, because how did they do this year? Did they make playoffs?
Yeah, they did make the playoffs.
Yeah, I think he can be a real asset to that program.
Bryn Mortensen, who's one of the key figures on those Blizzard teams that play in League One Alberta. She's been playing for McEwen, and she's moving to Dinos, so I guess she's returning back to sort of her roots, so to speak. University of Maine is getting another Calgarian.
Pipeline just keeps going. Yeah, this is Elise Hornick. She will be, the sixth player from Calgary on Maine?
Probably. I don't know. I've lost track, but that probably sounds about right. And there are many others. Maybe we'll mention some more next week, but those were just a few that caught my attention. The one other player who's off to university next year, I also want to mention, was Jorda James. She did something over the last week or so that most grade 12 high school students never have a chance to do.
Play for her country.
Yeah. The senior team.
Yeah. She played for the St. Kitts and Nevis senior women's national team.
Yeah, that's very cool. And she's off to the University of Maryland, Baltimore County in 2026. And Scott, I know you're a big fan of the name of college sports teams. Do you have any idea or what the name is of the University of Maryland, Baltimore County's team, what they're known as, what their nickname is?
You last quizzed me with the Vermont Catamounts, and I think I surprised you by knowing it. I'm not going to confess to knowing the University of Maryland, Baltimore County's mascot.
They are the Retrievers, as in golden retrievers.
Okay, all right, I like it.
And their logo is a golden retriever.
I got to look this up now. Oh, there it's like Airbud or whatever.
I don't know. It really, obviously I don't want to, I'm not trying to make fun of this team, but there's a lot of unusual college names, but I think this one's right up there. And they play at Retriever Soccer Park.
Perfect.
Thank you for listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast. You can have this podcast downloaded to your device as soon as it becomes available by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or other platforms. Check out our website at yycsoccer.com, where you can look through our episode archive and find other options to listen, including our YouTube channel. We also have links there so you can buy Scott's book. It's called Here Come the Cavalry, and it's all about the history of pro soccer in Calgary. You can leave a question or comment in the Contact Us section of our website. You can also interact with us on social media such as Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, where our username is YYC Soccer 403. Thanks for listening.